Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another interview. I've got Steve over at EOS Tribe. He's the actually the co-founder of EOS Tribe. I want to make that clear. How are you, Steve Floyd?
Good. How are you?
Good, man. I was introduced to you by my guy over at EOS Detroit and Rob, and he's a great guy, man. I've met him a few times over the past few years, and I'm glad he's doing that, heading that initiative over in Detroit with the EOS team. So again, we met through him, and you have a compelling story as well. And really to just let the audience know, this is one of the reasons why I was interested in EOS, not just specifically the technical standpoint, where what Dan Limmer is building, but also the community behind EOS. That's really the compelling thing to me, and what I saw was very interesting. Let's start off though. Yeah, let's start off though about you. Who is Steve Floyd? How did you even come up with EOS Tribe? Lead us up to this part where we are today.
So I have a background in like design. I started out my career, 97, 96 at a offset print job and had no real like previous experience, was just self-taught doing, I came from like music marketing, and I used to DJ. As you can see, I've got some DJ equipment still in the background to this day. And, just kind of like went from little freelance DJ gigs and little design, one-offs with flyers and stuff. And when I was like 20, 19, just, when everybody was getting into college, I was out trying to actually make money and pay rent. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I didn't have parents to pay for my college, that had, have a lot of money. Those of you out there didn't come from means can relate to that. So I just got out and just hustled and tried to make a living, and that led me to, I ended up, kind of being told I was talented. I don't think I really was at that time, but people, offered me a lot of, freelance gigs like designing and basically promoting and marketing. And that one of the guys that I actually used to do a night for, Knowledge Wednesdays back in Dallas, in the late 90s, early 2000s, was like, hey, this guy Andy was like, can you do what you do for Wednesday nights for like my HVAC company? And that was like my first account. And that he asked me like, who do I make the check out to? Because this isn't like the bar. I can't just pay you out cash. I have to write you a check, for my books. And, do you have a contract? So I went and scattered and like put together like some like the worst contract ever you could imagine, like just something I pulled offline and threw it together basically. And he wrote me the check, and I couldn't cash it until I went downtown and actually filed my name and got all my stuff set up and set up an account, a business account. But that was literally the beginning of my company that became AXZM. And I tried to iterate on it, for many years and failed. I mean, just really, I called it like freelance follies. Like I was more or less just a graphic designer trying to learn web, or 2001 to 2003 timeframe. And like most of my work was with print and design. But by like 2002, 2003, when web standards came in, you didn't have a job if you couldn't code websites. That's right. So I just started figuring that out. And this was like pre-WordPress, like Joomla. People were using Joomla, a fork of Mambo at that time. And like, I learned like basically just following, the web as it progressed, but I didn't go to school for it, and by about 2006, 2005, 2006 timeframe, I started to get some pretty big accounts. I went back out to, I'd failed, trying to build my company the first round, and went out and worked for a nonprofit in Ventura, California for like a few years, and kind of learned like it's really advanced out on the West Coast and the tech culture there. Like the average noob or just mid-level person was way more advanced than the average hick in Dallas, like they were just up on it, out there. Like, so I kind of like got the benefit of that like tech culture. And when I came back, I was like a big fish in a small pond. I was like, all of a sudden every person, like, oh, you can do Joomla? Well, hey man, fix my site. And I was like one of the top. I mean, I obviously don't really sound like a person. I'm more of an inner city kid from Dallas, and my mother's was originally from California. So I've never really fully fit in with like Texas culture in a lot of ways. Like,
wear cowboy boots.
Nah, I
Nah.
mean there's two, this from being in like, the city culture
Yep.
versus like the suburban culture versus the rural culture. There's
Mm-hmm.
like three different, even in Michigan,
Yeah.
there's like three different, like completely different cultures. And my
Absolutely.
dad grew up in South Dallas and I grew up in East Dallas, inner city, like proper.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know all that suburban life. Like a little bit, I mean,
Yeah.
I got to taste it, but I grew up having to scrap for mine. You know what I'm
So
saying? And that's
Steve,
like,
how did you
you
get
know,
into crypto? I always
well,
every
that
time
kind
I
of led me. That's where I
yeah.
was going, though. Like my agency, it's important that you understand the precursor, because that entrepreneurial journey of like just trial and error, coming back from California, actually getting some big accounts, like legit accounts, taught me like, the foundations of like, how to set up a contract, how to run a payroll, how to manage a
Mm-hmm.
P&L. I got up to about 15 people and did almost like 800K in revenue
Mm-hmm.
by 2012, 2013 timeframe, and kind of peaked. And that was like the peak of really like the web services industry.
Yep.
You know what I mean? At
Because
that
then
time.
it
And
just became freelance every mania.
yeah,
Yep.
like, like, and I saw the writings on the wall. So I kind of slowly, my landlord, probably the only real mentor of who has a lot of money that
Mm-hmm.
ever took time with me, like from that class, that ever came down and was like, look, this is what you need to do. He came and said, now, Steve, I've seen a bunch of guys in the same building do the same thing that you're about to do. You're going to try to keep all these people and keep up with the presence like you're running it, but really, the business cycle is going to flatten out and
Mm-hmm.
you're going to end up carrying all this cost. So if you were smart, you'd get rid of this place, shut down, let everybody go, but
Mm-hmm.
99 everybody, and get ready for the change. It's going to
Yeah.
shift. And sure enough, 2014, 2015, all the people that I had hired were super arrogant and self-entitled, and they were telling me how the cat ate the cabbage, the worst millennial,
Mm-hmm.
like, middle range millennial that is super entitled, that age group that everyone complains about. I got a piece of that, you know what I mean? Like, and some of these kids were from like a better, they were from upper class, like,
Mm-hmm.
so, they didn't have to struggle what I went through. So it was really, it was really resentful. I felt really resentful, like, man, I created this opportunity for you and you guys would just stab me in the back. But that's like a lesson, the cost of being the boss, you know what I
Yep.
mean? Like, nobody cares about your business like you do. And that it's important that you understand that, because that made me start to think about what I wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
and what I was interested in. And like, I never really was able to dig into computer science and, HCI and human factor stuff and UX like I really wanted to, because I was just constantly trying to
Managing
keep up,
project
you know,
managing probably.
and yeah. And like, I always say 10, 15 years of, out of the probably 18, 20 years of my career, 12 or 10 of those was actually in execution, and like 7 or 8 was managing people,
Yep.
and budgets and
That's
like
what happened with
sales
me.
and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really get to get as good as I could have if I would have really
Right.
focused on my craft. So I was like, you know what? Like, I want to get my chops back. I don't like this. And I'm like losing my vocation. I used to be a badass and people all came to me, and now I'm like just another mediocre guy. And like, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
like going into my 40s how that felt. I wanted to be one of those like player coaches where, if I told you to design something, you would be like, yo, your stuff is legit. Like, I'll
Right.
listen to you, and I just wanted that back. And if anybody who's been through that can relate to it, but basically that led me to also asking like what, industries were going to be around in the next 10 or 20 years versus this kind of dying web industry. There's a lot of automation. There's a lot of stuff coming in. AI and blockchain is coming in, and AI was very interesting, and I still study it. But it's like, it's got a ways to go, and there's some aspects of it that are a little boring to me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas blockchain had all these overlaps of like game theory and economics and
Mm-hmm.
cryptography and stuff that like I could at least wrap my head around. Whereas AI, these setting up all these neural nets and biases, that
Right.
it's starting to get really like you got to code calculus, to do some of that
Correct.
stuff. So I felt like, okay, well, maybe blockchain is a little bit, only to find out it's equally as, if not more hard.
Mm-hmm.
But not knowing that, I dove into it. And from about the end of 2013, early 2014, just being a speculator, looking at stuff that's out there, trying to acquire some Bitcoin, buying some grid seed, orbs, and putting those in my office, and building out my own big data server, and just getting back
So
into
so
like
what
comp
year
sci.
did you get into? Sounds like
End of
2013.
end of 2013, early 2014 is
Okay.
when I started to actually understand what it really was, versus
Hmm.
maybe in 2011, 2012 when I heard about it and thought if you had it, you would get arrested. So I
Yep.
was
Yep.
definitely one of those noobs that 2011, 2012, like the OGs, I was not looking at it. I thought, I was scared of it. I was like, whoa, this
Hmm.
is, if you have crypto, if you have Bitcoin, you're going to get arrested. Like the feds are
Hmm.
coming after you. You're doing some dark web stuff, like that. There was that perception. And my friends were getting into it, and people I knew were getting into it, and it was starting to become a little more legitimized. The price went up. That was definitely a big factor of like,
Right.
wow, okay, this is maybe more legitimate. There's institutional investors starting to be interested in it. And, people were at least talking about it. Maybe I should check this out, but I couldn't acquire it. So I tried to mine it, not very well. And that kind of like gave me a crash course in just, running a CG miner, and the
Hmm.
basic
Yep. Yep.
foundations of Bitcoin and how it worked, and like what a distributed ledger was. And then the little bit that I acquired, I got scared and traded it out in a local marketplace, you know what I mean? And just kind of, I had to make payroll at that time and put it
Hmm.
down for like 6, 7 months. And then Ethereum came in, and I was like, oh, this is going to be really big. But I didn't buy it when it was like 50 cents to $5.
Right.
I bought it at like you know, 20 to 30 up to $100 average, and
Yeah,
it
same
acquired.
same here. I didn't buy it
Yeah.
until it was about 12 or $11.
Right.
And many times you have what happens, people, I had been in crypto for quite some time by the time Ethereum came around, but you create this normalcy bias kind of where you think this thing and that's the way it's going to be, and you kind of miss a lot of the new
Right.
ideas that hit the
Right. And
market. And
I totally underestimated it. I really
yeah,
did. And it
me
was
too.
like I
Me
missed
too.
Bitcoin, and then I missed the full potential of Ethereum. Didn't really have at that time the money that I did in 2012,
Right.
2013, going into 2014, 2015. I wasn't doing as good financially, so I couldn't go throw 40, 50 grand at it and be one of these guys who was, now runs a crypto asset hedge fund.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like we know those guys, right? That
Yeah.
were just as broke as us, that
Yep.
all of a sudden are like balling out of control and got crypto rich. And that was the initial motivator. Like, but as I got into the problems of blockchain and what was the larger movement was really about, I kind of shifted 2016, 2015, going more into like R&D research kind of mindset on fundamentals and trading less, and not really caring about the speculator kind of mindset that most of
Yeah.
my friends were in, that were just like day trading and getting into it, and just, I was really turned off by that part of the culture, and was like looking for, okay, what's going to drive adoption? And going into the end of 2016, like early 2017, after, really feeling like Ethereum had just ran its course and I didn't see any real utility in it, led me to like the BitShares and Steemit, and the kind of graphene family of chains, and what was, then announced a consensus, obviously EOS. But I also thought it was potentially a scam at that time, because like a
Mm.
lot of people did, I was skeptical. And right when it came out, I didn't initially, and I'll just be totally honest about that. When it very first came out, I was skeptical, and I think that's okay. I think it's good
It
to
is. Yeah,
have
that's
some
fine.
skepticism, but
Absolutely.
after really looking into the fundamentals of the project and some things that started to come out, really summer, July, August, September range, and the community that started to bubble up, by I'd say like October to December, I had started to do genuine research on the project and really
And see,
follow it.
that's the
Wasn't
thing.
active in the
See,
community,
yeah, that
wasn't like, still wasn't fully dove into it, but was actually starting to take it serious and accumulate some, and like, okay, this could be the like next major Ethereum, or the next major, like, coin, or project that is more than a coin. It's more than a token. It's like a protocol, full-fledged protocol that will enable all these mainstream
and
decentralized
and
applications.
that's the thing where I want people. You brought up a good point about being skeptical, questioning everything. I think we should all have that critical
Yeah.
eye
Even your
towards.
own bag, homie. Like question
Absolutely.
your own bag, even if you believe in it.
Right. And
Um,
so the thing is, but many people stop there. They never actually go and do any further due diligence
right.
on the things that they just write off and say, well, that kind of challenges my thinking. I won't go any further with it. But that's great that you did. And from there, you got the EOS
December,
bug.
January, like I was asking questions here and there.
Yeah,
I still didn't know. And I'll admit there are so many layers to
absolutely.
delegated proof of stake DPoS and particularly EOS at the system level
I'm
that
learning
you
new stuff every day.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I do not even as a block producer candidate,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a computer science person. So maybe my partner, Eugene Luskin, knows the entire stack, but I'm
Right.
much more focused on how to integrate in the front end with it and build
But
build
that's a
out
good
stuff that
point.
really
Was EOS a did that intrigue you, EOS, the project, because you come from that user experience background and you know how important user
oh yeah,
experience
yeah,
is, right?
absolutely.
To see that we have a blockchain where you can use user accounts. I can send you money or send you tokens just by using your user account. Like small stuff like that to
Little
me.
stuff, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And, usability, UX is doesn't stop with the front end. I always say this. It doesn't
Yeah.
stop with just what you see. It's a system level. It's like the error handling and, the
Yes.
developer
Yes.
experience, the name spacing, and like the way the file structure is organized. And it's the entire stack. You know what I mean? So when most people think about usability, they just think, oh, well, what I see. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
what I
and we've been in the space for so long. We expect the commoners, the people that don't have Bitcoin, right, or cryptocurrencies, we expect them to conform to our thinking, and that in real life, that's not how it's going to ultimately happen. It's going to have to be something where the
they don't
masses
even know
can.
that it's a blockchain. Like they just start using some app.
That's what how it needs to be
Yeah.
presented. If we
Yeah.
want blockchain to really be
They have to compete with their modern, like Dan says, their modern counterparts,
yes,
directly.
exactly,
So,
exactly.
but needless to say that like about January, I started Dallas, EOS Dallas.
Okay.
At end of January, like early February, I started to ask questions in the community, kicked up a little dust like right away. People started to notice me and kind of usher me in, and some people helped me and were really nice. Shout out to all those people. Eugene, who became my partner in EOS Tribe, was one of those people. He was kind of patient with me in those early, and it still is for the things that I understand. Like I said, I'm
Yeah,
not
it
a
really is.
hardcore, I don't code C++. I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
hardcore systems engineer. So I focus on what you can see in the front end stack, and like what, the design layer primarily. I have a respect for the rest of it, but I'm not as knowledgeable maybe as the people who've been on, the Steemic community for 2 or 3 years as witnesses, guys like Luke and Luke Stokes and guys who have,
Right.
even Rob, who has a history in BitShares and is at more of an on the engineering side. So, I definitely study and learn, but I'm more focused on, creating meaningful experiences within this community to drive adoption and usability, for end users, thinking about what you're saying, what they think, not
Yeah,
what, because it's
man.
such an engineering driven culture.
I
That's
know.
a good thing. Like I should be welcome and people should get that. That's part of my value is that I'm
Yep.
not so far down the stack that I'm
Exactly.
speaking Klingon, that I'm actually like thinking about what the end users think, and that's a bridge if they were paying attention to, you know what I mean,
Yep.
to communicating better as a community. But I don't get me wrong, the Richard Hart interview, I feel like I could have done better. And but that's the thing with Richard. If you if you're rude and you interrupt, then he's a jerk. So it's like I go out to these channels like yours to like expound that message of, hey, like we need to be the protocol for adoption. If you want to talk about really seeing mainstream adoption and throughput at a level that end users wouldn't know that they were using a blockchain, EOS is one of the
It's
main
got
places.
to get to that point, Steve. It's got to get to the point where users don't know they're using the blockchain. And that's when we'll see everyone on the blockchain. And I think EOS is if it's not the
Something
answer,
like it. Yeah.
so,
Like, yeah.
something like we're going in the right direction with
Right.
EOS, I believe. So,
Right.
tell us about you started EOS Dallas, and that kind of morphed into
It
what
was
we know.
EOS Salt Lake City and
Okay.
EOS Dallas. Basically, Eugene Luskin was the co-founder of EOS Salt Lake City. I'm the
Okay.
founder of EOS Dallas, and I was going to start a block producer candidacy just as EOS Dallas, and my other technical founder was kind of a jerk and was just like approaching it like with a minor mentality, and was just really rude and just hard to deal with. So I was like,
Okay.
like I'm just gonna put my hat take my hat out of the ring. I'm gonna fold and just try to do something else. Maybe I can like do a DAP or something else. And Eugene was like, hey, like, these a few other block producer candidacies had courted us individually.
Hmm.
Like some had courted me, some had courted him to like, hey, you guys should come join our team, and kind of trying to little bro us and just make us like, basically employees. And I have an entrepreneurial background and have made money by myself. And in
Hmm.
many cases, I had more experience than these other people that were trying to hire me.
Yeah.
So, I was like, look, dude, like, I'm just going to do my own thing. It's all good. And me and Eugene started talking, and we're like, why don't we just do our own, join forces? You're the technical guy. You kind of are the UX guy and can kind of help, with the design stuff I'm not good at. So let's just join forces, and we don't have to have a bunch of, 5, 6 other people all getting 1/4, 1/5 of this little bitty block reward. And we're working 12, 15 hours a day. Let's just focus on this and go all in. And like, the rest is history. This is about 3 months ago, going on 4 months ago, basically, that we started our candidacy, our announcement post that, yeah. And that's,
So
the rest is history.
EOS Tribe, I've got your site up now.
The
Um,
name is kind of like tongue in cheek. It's like, crypto is tribal. Obviously, like people are going to defend their bags, like, but more than that, like it's also kind of a nod to us wanting to be a little smaller and not such a big, like over, big operation. And also,
hmm.
like we both felt like we had found our tribe
Hmm.
in this whole thing in EOS. Like we felt like, man, these are like our people. It's a lot of sharp, even if we don't get along with some of them sometimes, and vice versa. Ultimately, these are like the caliber of people and the community that we've been looking for.
So, what about EOS Tribe sets you apart though from a lot of these other BPs? How do you differentiate yourself? How do you separate yourself from the tribe per se?
For us, I mean, just that like, one, we're security focused, like more,
Okay.
and I will be proud of that to us, to basically, lift Eugene up in that regard, is that he is a world class security guy. I mean,
Yeah, because you
he
guys
really
didn't
is.
go the route of an AWS spin up.
No,
There was a
I mean,
lot
this,
of
yeah, like
like
serious infrastructure. I mean,
yeah.
that's a selling point, but like buying a bunch of bare metal and putting in a colo is one thing, but having the chops to actually run it, secure it, and manage it effectively, but also the adoption piece and the usability, the UX kind of stuff that I bring to the table, that combined, because you find a lot of guys who are maybe security focused. You find some guys who are like, trying to drive adoption, do some dApps. Maybe they've got some UX chops, but we have both, really at a real high level, that, and
And
we
you
like to
also
pride
have
ourselves in
business.
culture.
You have a business acumen too.
Yeah.
That's important to highlight as well. You
Yeah.
know,
Both me and Eugene come from like startup and, either working directly with large organizations or working at large organizations. So a mix of not just all startup experience
mm-hmm.
and not all enterprise experience. We both have a good mix of enterprise and startup experience, have ran and managed businesses ourselves, and have also worked with or worked at large organizations. I mean, people, when they found out that Eugene was like, he used to work at Deutsche Bank and, he worked at Federal Reserve, are like, oh my God, conspiracy. And it's like,
Oh
he
my
was just
God.
an IT director. He wasn't like some big, those are like the people in the top 1% that they're talking about that run the whole organization. He was just like a worker bee, you know what I mean? And if anything, they should say, hey, this guy has actually secured some of the the most insane hacking targets in the world
Right.
effectively
Yeah.
for long periods of time. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
like done a good job at that, and that's something that we say. It's people have this thing where they like any kind of mention that banks themselves or the establishment is the people we want to tear down. And it's like, I think that's partially true if they don't like catch up to where things are going. I know you had an interview with Brock Pierce recently, and he said
Mm-hmm.
something to the effect of, we're not going to really change these institutions
Nope.
throwing rocks from the outside.
That's true.
And I can agree with that, it's not full-fledged integration. I mean, they have to like come down, they not down to us, but meet us at the table,
Yes,
so to
and
speak.
respect us, but
Yeah,
yeah.
but we also that was part of my keynote at at Tulip conference. In my presentation on the main stage was that you it's not the incumbent system's job to make it easy for us. Like we have to get our proverbial shit together, like
Yep.
we do, like we really do. We have to register if we're doing tokens. We have to stay within compliance. We have to like make sure we go through Reg D if it's if it meet, get registered investors if we have to go through those rounds and like
Mm-hmm.
dot our I's and cross our T's, so to speak. So a lot of those criticisms, are quelled, and people can look back and, maybe 5 years and say, wow, like this new breed, these guys coming up really have their stuff together and give this industry a good name. And that's another side of the narrative. I don't think that that's bad. I don't think that we should completely sell out and do like and bow down to the incumbent system either. We should disrupt them and make it uncomfortable for them and make them have to change their shady business models, or they'll go out of business.
Correct.
And that's a good thing. That's the other counterbalance to that is if they don't keep up, like that's going to happen anyways.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why people are so worried. It's like, hey, certainly we'll follow the law, and like, but we'll also change a lot of the law in the process.
There you go. Exactly.
And that's that
But
balance
when,
of like,
when Brock said that, I didn't think of it that way. Yeah, you can't. You won't be successful. It's that game theory thing. Like you won't be successful just throwing rocks and being all anti this and this and that. If you really want to truly, it's playing. You're playing chess, not checkers, right? Essentially.
absolutely. And that's really that's probably for me the biggest like change and shift that you're going to see is most of those people that we're worried about are really old, and they're going to be dead in like 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, these are 70, 80, 90-year-old people that
Correct.
are either going to be completely incapacitated and not be even a factor anymore,
Right.
or dead.
Right.
And their
Right.
children are going to take over, who are
Right.
all in their 40s to late 50s,
Yep.
who grew up on hip hop and
Right.
similar stuff that most of us did. I mean, they're still from that class, and they're a little removed, but they're much easier to negotiate with and kind of meet in the middle.
Right.
In the
Right.
previous generation, who would just like shut them down, kill them all. Like it was just like really bad. The last 20, 30 years of what we've seen, they're all going to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And should we be approaching their underlings and their middleman or whatever with this negative like pitchfork mentality where they're just going to pull back and do the same thing? We're like, no, like we want to integrate, we want to like work within the framework of the system and not be these idealists, so we can and at the same time start bringing them along to the way things are going, because we need, in some ways, I've said this before, what if you had $5 million or $10 million in crypto on a ledger and people in your hood knew that?
Mm-hmm.
You don't think you would want a bank or safety deposit box?
Yep.
Their business model is just going to have to change.
Yes.
And that's all it is. Like
Absolutely.
there's still things for property rights and titles and all kinds of stuff and loans that banks can add liquidity. Maybe they need to change up their fractional reserve banking. Maybe they need to start using, blockchains themselves to make sure that their business dealings are a lot more transparent and or maybe zero knowledge proofs where you couldn't see what that information was from the person, but you could confirm and audit those things to know that what they were doing. I mean, who knows where that's going to go? But I definitely think that if they don't evolve, the incumbent system is going to fail. So
So
that's the,
let's talk about. Yeah, I agree with you totally on that
sorry
one.
to get off on that tangent, but
No,
that's
no,
like,
you're
we
fine.
talk about mainstream adoption, but like that's another component
Yeah,
is actually really facing like what it's going to take to get this in the next 10 years to a level where people are like using blockchain in the in the mainstream. And it's not this thing that enslaves us. It's something that empowers us as consumers, you know? So
yeah, yeah, no doubt. So let's talk about more so specifically EOS and where we stand today. We've got, the Constitution 2.0 that has been proposed by Dan Larimer. And also, I want to talk about really voting. Voting has actually, the percentage of votes have dropped a little bit. Let's talk about how can we change that. Me personally, I feel like this is the type of thing we don't know the outcome of it until you get it into the wild and you see the human reaction or interaction with this blockchain and to see how we can fix things, what solutions we can come up with. But does there need to be some type of incentivization or something for people to stake their votes? What do you think about voting and where it is as far as
I saw
percentage
that
wise?
recommendation of basically taking a percentage of RAM fees and paying people to stake or,
Mm-hmm.
from other mechanisms within the system. And basically like, I mean, I think that that would definitely like make people want to, to stake more
Yeah.
and, reassert their vote. But then you get this, I think there's a potential for people to, you know, um, be more aggressive. Well, what happens if the RAM fees go away? Too, there's another side to that. And is RAM trading sustainable?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are we going to trade up and lock up so much of the system RAM that's not being used that it's going to bottom out the system? And then we're in this race to the bottom to add as much RAM as we can
Yeah.
to, so quickly and so price, that's so priced up beyond the 20% that Dan recommended
Mm-hmm.
that then we're in a situation where, it's not even profitable to be a block producer.
Mm-hmm.
And then that damages the quality of people on the network or invites people that maybe we don't, is real mining heavy, mining
Correct.
culture mentality heavy, who can run that as a loss leader. And then they consolidate most of the, I mean, it's hard because of the way proof of work is set up for someone to really do a 51% attack, although that is happening now in proof of work systems.
Yep.
But I mean, we've seen this that one company, Bitmain, and a few companies in Ethereum more or less like control the majority of mining.
Yeah.
So why that's bad is that, on this subject is that if you have a situation where, you wanted to go, people always use this against us in EOS is that, from those camps, they're like, even in the Richard Hart interview was like, you can't take out a distributed system like this. And it's like, well, dude, if they kicked in the door of those 3 facilities in China and they took those out, that would cripple the network. So, you can't do that in, 150 different nodes because sure, you take out the top 21 and 21 replace them.
Exactly. And I was
And
having
then,
this
and then you try to
conversation
go
with
to
someone
all
about,
these
yeah.
different places. You try to go kick in the door in Argentina, Rio, Texas, you know what I mean? Like
But
Wyoming.
I
All
agree.
these
I agree
jurisdictions.
with you wholeheartedly with that one. My thing is, what I did see that needs to be addressed is so many of these BPs on the AWS type cloud
Oh
server.
yeah, that I
That
completely
needs
agree
to
with that.
change
Yeah.
because at that point, where if they kick in the door at Amazon and say, "I need you to shut down all of these BPs," then they
Which
can.
is one of the reasons that we don't just have one full, like one
Right.
producing node
Yeah, the
at
secondary.
Wyoming,
Mm-hmm.
but we looked at the 2 states, like, Utah has, law, they accept cryptocurrencies for taxes. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
pay with Bitcoin there. So they encourage like, people to do business as long as you're compliant with cryptocurrency. They're not as well structured as some of the laws that just came out in Wyoming, obviously, and that's where our primary node is. But our secondary node, our backup node, in case anything happened to Wyoming, catastrophic failure, we have a backup node in Bluffdale, Utah.
And
So
I
we
think
thought
these
about
types
that.
of things will start to really permeate the culture, the BP culture, what you're doing over EOS Tribe. And we're so young, man. The thing is not even, is it like a month old?
Yeah, I mean, it's a month old,
So
man. I mean,
we've
and
got,
we're
we're
all
going to
noobs. Like
improve.
the majority of people, like, let's be clear, like 70% of the block producers that you see in the ecosystem are total DPoS noobs. And it just comes through. And I admit it. I admit that, like, I may have studied Steam, how Steemit worked, and like had a concept of bit shares, but I'm not like, Rob, who's been in it, deep, like for many, many years.
Right.
And the vast majority and they won't admit it. They act like because they have this big startup history, or they have some like VC history, or they're connected to technology in some way for a long time, that translates to this space. I think a lot of people need to take a knee and be humble. And I'm not afraid to do that and say, hey, I mean, I've got a lot to learn. I mean, Eugene has been in cryptography for 20 years. So he has a deep system level knowledge, but how the 21, 2/3 plus one own the account that can push referendum through. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of people interpreted that, including myself, and got kind of up in arms like, well, wait a minute, one account has the only way to post referendum. Well, what if the, number 40 through 90 BPs, and this even slipped Rob, and he's been in it forever. Guys who have been in it missed this and said, whoa, we can't have that, because it was said that the EMLG group was going to have control of that. And that's just bad PR on their part, not understanding that you can't say that one group has ownership of a single account, because that's a headline on CoinDesk.
Man,
you know what I mean? Like, what it is that there is a EOSIO system contract that is already in place that can push referendums through, that has to have a 2/3 plus one majority in the top 21, or it could be a multi-sig wallet that is in the top 50, or 0.05%, whoever's collecting in the 0.05% inflation to meet, at least getting paid, could make a vote on the referendum that they approve. That referendum would then be put up for voting publicly, and then those votes would be tallied. And if it was passed, then that would be pushed through by the 2/3 plus one and basically made into, law. There's this balance of like, code is sort of law that the OGs want to see. And then there's this idealistic kind of, view of this sovereign digital society that people are wanting to see in EOS, that have a lot of expectations for what they wanted it to be. But that's not how DPoS works. You know what I'm saying? Like it isn't a full on democracy. It is sort of like a pseudo democratic aristocracy. So, whoever has the most stake. Now, we could certainly look at vote weighting, but what mathematically is that vote weighting going to represent? Because you could screw things up real quick if you don't do that right. And we've had some really smart mathematicians and like really, really smart people working on this stack for many, many years, not just Dan. So the balance that they're trying to find is, we don't want to like mess that up necessarily. We do want to so I think that the at a high level, the referendum, the Constitution, they're all kind of interrelated, because how are we going to change the Constitution? Through referendum.
Right.
We have to go through referendum to actually change that. Well, here's something nobody's talking about. I literally, and I give props to Luke Stokes for bringing this up, but he's right. And that's, if you do not submit a proposal that is vetted and that already has the actual code changes or actual changes you're proposing, what are they going to approve if it passes? An idea? Well, okay. Oh, we need to change this. Okay, that's what people think they're voting on. That's a great idea. Yeah. But how are you going to do it? Where's the code to push it through? Has it been tested? Have you put it in the test net to make sure it's all been vetted? Because it's all code, even if it's just the Ricardian contract, the Constitution, the Reg Producer Agreement, it's all essentially code.
Yeah.
So if you don't have the actual version that you're proposing to change, and that has been voted on, and then that gets pushed through to the 2/3 majority through the EOSIO account, the 2/3 plus one majority, like that is how you pass a referendum. But we need to define what a referendum is. And this, without the referendum, you can't have the worker proposal system. Yep. You don't have the forums. You have nothing.